stuck in the van. Stuck in the van. Stuck in the van.
Welcome. We are here. When you see the corn kid, you know that we are here. We are here today to talk about the Red Hot Chili Peppers 1991 album, Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic. This is an album that I have never owned. Oh, I guess I need to do this for the thumbnail, don't I? Here it is.
Yeah. There you go.
That's what we are talking about today.
Someone has that fully tattooed on their back, probably. You know that, right?
I mean, it would be, it's a pretty iconic album cover. I am sad to say I've never owned it. I taped it off of somebody in high school, and it was entirely too explicit for me to ever purchase it,
Yeah.
without having to own up to that. So, yeah, I mean, this is an album, man, 1991. So you listen to this band and you definitely hear their influences. You hear Parliament Funkadelic for sure. You hear Led Zeppelin. You hear Jimi Hendrix. Um, it's interesting to think about what was happening in 91. There's a song I love that had come out a couple years earlier, and that's Faith No More's Epic.
Yeah.
Do you know that song? Uh,
Was that a few years before?
89 is when that came out.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
So, I know the Chili Peppers were kind of doing their aggressive speed metal funk thing before this with their
Right.
previous albums. But I wonder if they heard that Faith No More song and, if that had some influence on Anthony
Well,
Kiedis in particular.
yeah, I mean, dress and then style how they rock the mic, literally like stomping up and down. You know that Red Hot Chili Peppers and Faith No More notoriously hate each other, right?
I'm sure they do. That would track.
I didn't look up any research on it, but I know that that's true, and I don't have a problem making that statement. And it's probably more Mike Patton than anything, but you could see how he wouldn't enjoy the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Well,
Pretty
yeah, I mean, you see Anthony stomping around and doing this sort of quasi hip hop speak singing thing, and it's like, well, those guys did it a couple years prior, so that's interesting.
it is.
I don't know, if Casey, if you've seen this meme floating around, but it's like albums that were released within 44 days of each other in 1991. Do you know what I'm
Uh,
talking about? It's like a
oh
stack
yeah,
of
with like the
tape.
6 cassettes.
Yeah, so those I went and looked it up again. It's Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
Yep,
It is the Metallica Black Album,
yep. Never
Pearl
mind.
Jam 10,
Yep, yep.
Guns N'
Guns N' Roses.
Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2,
Yep.
Soundgarden, Bad Motorfinger,
Okay. Okay.
Nirvana, Nevermind.
I think that's seven. Did you say 7 or 6?
I've lost track at this point. Uh,
Well,
do you know what else came out?
Guns N' Roses should not get, they shouldn't count as two, especially since neither one of those albums was great. But I remember it being a huge marketing thing.
Hmm.
Like, I remember like Sam Goody at the Conningtown Mall, local mall here. Um, and yeah, I don't remember anything really particularly. I mean, I don't even remember ever hearing the whole album, but
Hmm.
yeah, the rest you still got a solid 5 or 6 there.
It was clearly a time where rock music was changing. It was
Yeah.
transforming from hair metal into alternative grunge. Fill
Yeah.
in the blank. Um, Interestingly enough, do you know what else came out in September of 1991?
Oof. Is this a popular release or a kind of underground? Is it
Uh,
Sonic Youth?
Ween the Pod.
Okay. The Pod. It's a past episode callback. Yeah, they fit right in
And
there.
what no one ever puts in the list of these albums came out within 44 days. Tribe Called
Uh,
Quest Low End Theory was also September 91.
yeah,
So, fun fact. Okay,
that's
here
good call.
is I was trying to give you like a one paragraph summation of why I love this album because I get the feeling, I get the sense that you don't. and that's okay. But I actually don't have to come up with my own paragraph because Dave Christmas 7424 on YouTube has said it for me. Are you ready to hear this?
Okay. Dave Christmas, lay it on us.
I swear this album is a masterpiece. If you just look on the surface, yeah, it's funky sex rock. But if you listen to the music, it is some of the most complex and beautiful sounds ever recorded onto a commercially successful album. Every song is pure, unbridled passion. Forever my favorite album, and I find something new every listen.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot to listen to. Um, I don't even know where to start. I've done the least amount of homework ever for this episode. I literally just completed Funky Monks, so that's my biggest reference, which is a documentary. And if I was to open up with just something about this album, it would be Rick Rubin produced it. I love Rick Rubin. There are some great songs, mostly singles that everyone knows. I think Breaking the Girl would be the kind of like the highlight great one. And I love seeing them record all the weird percussion sounds on
Yeah.
that documentary. And that song's just amazing. We both love that song in the 90s. And everyone likes Under the Bridge. It's a really pretty song with some darker lyrics. But
Hmm.
I don't think I ever really listened to this album. And like the power of equality, if you have to ask, Funky Monks. I'm reading the songs over here. Mellowship, Slinky and B major. Uh ooh, to me this is like a 20 minute, this is like an EP that's solid gold. And then I can't I didn't pick up any deep cuts.
Okay.
And then also, it's pretty dated. And when I say pretty dated, I mean, topically, it's pretty, I'm not going to say canceled, but, I don't think it flies as well these days. Some of
Like
you
the
know,
sex
the
maniac on the
show,
prowl kind of thing.
the chauvinist kind of things that, I mean, it doesn't bother me or anything, to me, but, it's just a timepiece, really. I mean, is Clinton president during this? Like,
Actually, no.
he probably is. I always kind of liked, I think it's the first single or maybe the last, Suck My Kiss.
Yeah.
Um, it really hits different when you know that that's not what the song's supposed to be the name.
Yeah. Well,
So,
okay.
it's a good song though.
So you brought up a lot. So yeah, the
Yeah,
length. Okay.
there's a lot.
It I will grant you that everything after Under the Bridge seems a little bit excessive. They really crammed that into a CD length, you know,
Yeah,
album.
yeah.
Um, it's what you did back then, you know.
You don't
You
need to
want
listen to the B side, basically.
I mean, there are things to like, and I particularly enjoy on Sir Psycho Sexy, which is quite a
Yeah,
track. There are moments where they are really sitting on that beat, like they are feeling that beat that they're playing. I mean, we don't have to talk about the lyrics of that song,
right.
um, but yeah, you brought up Breaking the Girl. So okay, this one to me feels like I don't know, but it feels like the clearest example of the Rick Rubin effect.
Hmm.
um, it seems unlikely that they would have come up with that song, or at least in that same way, if he weren't there
Okay.
kind of with his Rick Rubin philosophical presence, because it's what I love how that song, it's completely unlike anything else that was on the radio at the time, let alone
Oh yeah.
on this band's album. But it sounds like human beings playing it. When I listened to it today, I was listening to those drum fills, and
Yeah.
that like mellotron in the background or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if that kind of song were made today, it would be produced, it would be like Pro Tools, it would be pitch corrected,
Hmm.
and I think that song just feels like a group of people playing, and it's really immediate because of that. I love that song.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is not a typical Chili Peppers track. I remember, Under the Bridge and oh gosh, give it away. Let's not go there. But but yeah, Breaking the Girl, I was like, wow, this is the single I like. And I don't remember it getting a lot of like, you know, Live 105, local Bay Area alternative station play. But I remember us seeing it on MTV, and it
Hmm.
was a cool video and it had like a new age kind of look, looked like an Enya video or something. And it is, I think it's, I mean, if there's any song on here to talk about that's still standing out, I think it's this over Under the Bridge by far.
Hmm.
But
Well, let's talk about Under the Bridge because if people know any songs from this album, it's probably that one.
yeah,
Maybe Give It Away.
yeah.
Um, and Under the Bridge, of course, is Anthony's very like he's bearing his soul about addiction and having this kind of low point in his life where he was under a bridge in LA with a bunch of druggies and just thinking like I've got to get out of here. And that kind of sincerity was a big risk for them.
Yeah, it comes through too, you know.
Yeah, and it's beautiful the way the song. I remember everyone tried to play that opening guitar riff uh, at the
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
and no, of course, nobody could. It's
right.
extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Um, and just the way the song builds, it builds, it swells, and then it comes right back down to that, crescente
Well,
guitar outro at
yeah,
the end.
for Shante is the win here for me. Rick Rubin for Shante. I do like Flea. I love seeing him in movies. He's the most energetic grown-up toddler in the world. He's I'm way more into him than Anthony Kiedis, but and then apparently he was told to really kind of tone down the kind of funk punk bass that he played that he was so known for, and I think that really comes through on this album.
Yeah.
Just to say a few positives here, there those things are true. Like Shantae's awesome on this, and he left after this, and I
Mhm.
don't think they really kind of came back until he came back. Dave Navarro. I mean, for some reason, I think he's fine in Jane's Addiction, but I don't think he was fine in Red Hot Chili Peppers.
It wasn't a
He was
great
enjoying
fit.
a big paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to the album after this, and it just doesn't quite work.
Aeroplane one.
Yeah, One Hot Minute. It's got some interesting tracks on it. But yeah, there's you're right. I think the magic of this album is Frusciante.
Hmm.
I do think that Chad Smith is underrated here. I think
Will
you
Ferrell.
mentioned
Will
Will
Ferrell.
Ferrell. Yes, Will Ferrell. Uh, you mentioned the song "Suck My Kiss," which,
Uh-huh.
listen, I know it's a problematic title. It's a
Yeah.
problematic. Uh, anyway, it's
It's a
super
good song.
masculine.
Yeah.
It's just. But here's the thing: when you listen to that song, you hear how locked in he is, Smith, with
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
kick drum and with Flea, and it's just.
Mhm.
I mean, he is. They are locked in a way that I have never heard in a band. And I used to think that it was like when I was just getting into this album and I would listen to it, I'd say, "Oh, I bet." I don't know. It just didn't seem as unique to me back then. But I listen to it now. I'm like, wow, they were one of the tightest bands, at least on this album,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that I've ever heard. Uh, you mentioned "Power of Equality." That's like my sleeper pick for my favorite track.
Okay. Well, I mean they're hitting on some more current topics than some of the others on here, but I'd have to say pretty bad opener. I had to listen to it a few more times. I was pretty lazy on this one, but I'll say it to point out a few oddity tracks. Uh, I could have lied. Do you
Hmm.
know the story on that one?
Supposedly about
There's
Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah, Anthony Kiedis' relationship with Sinead O'Connor, which apparently she denies. Um, it's kind of funny. But yeah, I mean that's pretty interesting. And then I wanted to point out that Soul to Squeeze, which was a huge hit, I think it was on the Conehead soundtrack, is
Yep.
actually an outtake from this album. And why it's not on this album, is it just too much like Under the Bridge? Because it kind of is, but it has the same tempo and the same
Yeah.
feel to it. But that was a
Well,
huge hit.
it
It's
was.
nowhere.
It was a massive hit,
Huge.
and that stood out to me watching the documentary as well. I was like, oh man, I forgot how just polished and just how good this song sounds. And I think that they left it off because it actually sounds a lot like the New Orleans one, Apache Rose Peacock. If you
Okay, I
listen to
think I
the
remember that one a little.
Yeah, if you listen to the chorus of that Apache Rose song, it sounds a heck of a lot like Soul to Squeeze. So I think that's why it became a B-side.
Makes
I think
sense.
they just chose one, and they probably chose the wrong one.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure it was super profitable for the Conehead soundtrack. It's
Yeah.
always funny, like that Nirvana song that ended up on the Beavis and Butthead soundtrack, and like it's just it's just weird.
Hmm.
It, I mean, I guess we don't even have movies like that anymore, where it's like an SNL spin-off movie. I mean, it
Yeah.
just doesn't exist. Oh,
Well, I mean, in the '90s, the soundtrack was king, and if you had a movie soundtrack, you wanted a song by an A-list band, not a
yeah.
throwaway song, but like a song, like a hit.
Mhm.
And some huge hits came from soundtracks, and this is a perfect
Oh yeah,
example.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, I mean, of course, now it doesn't matter, but it is an interesting. It's very 90s, you know. It has
Uh-huh.
such a 90s feel. And that video, I remember it's supposed to be like it's like Freaks or something, that famous 30s movie or something. They're all in the
Like a
circle,
circus kind
white, I think. I
of.
don't know. I meant to watch it. We're kind of jumping the gun ahead on this episode, but I think it's going okay. Um,
Well, I did just want to mention one thing. So you kind of you never like my openers, Casey, but
I know.
I have to defend Power of Equality. I just I think it's the coolest start because it's like this like tinny sound where it's just ding, 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 and you're like, why? This sounds terrible. What am I listening to? So you turn it up, and then the drums
Uh-huh.
kick in, dun, 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 and uh, to me, it's like a total Chad Smith just showcase that whole song. And I would argue that, yes, to your point, some of this album has not aged well. It's very masculine. It's very, I don't know, it gets a little too aggressive maybe in places. Um,
Yeah.
but that particular song, I mean, he's name checking Public Enemy. He's saying death to the Ku Klux Klan. Like he's coming out blazing on this.
Yeah.
And this was like a couple
Yeah.
of years after Public Enemy came out, you know?
It's a very uncool time in music, you know, like Vanilla Ice had already come out. Like it's just a rough time. This does stand out, you know. It it's its own thing, but I mean like there's a lot of problems. Give it away. That song. I know for like a couple days it was okay, but I just always think of the Weird Al version. And
Yeah,
I think he put the nail in the coffin for me.
that's
The
fair. I
video's
actually,
cool. They look like they're before Burning Man was a thing, you know,
well,
which is
okay.
interesting.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you and give it away. And maybe it's because I don't have you know, I don't have the Weird Al song in my head to kind of like uh, mess up that image for me. But I do think the video is iconic. I just think that song with the flea, like apparently they were just hanging out one day and flea started going boom, 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 boom. And then
Yeah,
it was such
I
a
can see
ridiculous
that.
bass line. They built an entire song around it.
Yeah.
To me, it is like everything I love about
Oh,
this
for
band.
sure.
The interesting thing that I about this band for me, and I already told you this off the record, but I really don't like anything else they've done.
Well, I mean, whatever Stadium Arcadium definitely had some hits, and then one later, I don't even know I mean, they've really repeated what they started here. They kind of got away from their early roots of funk punk, hip hop elements, the George Clinton kind of elements that, you know, is kind of what they are. And then they kind of had a lot more softer kind of ballady Anthony Kiedis stuff. And, you know, I don't see how you could love this so much unless it's a pure nostalgia trip and not like some of the better newer stuff because I mean there's a lot of it. I'm not particularly into them, but I won't turn off the radio if they come on if it's a song I like, you know.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. You're probably onto something with nostalgia for sure. But to me, like the only Chili Peppers album I've ever owned is Californication, and that's the one that everyone seems to think is their
Okay.
greatest. I just don't. I just think that everything on that album sounds like, I don't know, 60% as cool as a song just like it on Blood Sugar Sex Magic. And
Okay.
uh, I just find it to be, yeah, the drum sound is horrendous on that album. It's
Is
so
that the
weak.
one with Danny California?
No, it's the one with
Yeah.
Scar Tissue.
Okay, right, right.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
Anything
That
else?
video is amazing. Danny California
I
with
have
all
not
the
seen it.
different bands. If you've never seen that, you got to see it. They're
Okay.
like you know, the Stones and, you know, Jimi Hendrix and Misfits, and it's really cool. I probably
Okay.
got some of those wrong, but it's a cool video.
I
Uh,
think that's probably the song of theirs I like the best out of their later hits, I guess. But I don't know. For me, it's just this one album that it really speaks to me, and I keep coming back to it. I just
yeah.
it's there's albums like Joni Mitchell Blue that I respect and love, but never listen to,
Mhm.
and then there's an album like this that I always want to listen to. So for what it's worth,
That's peculiar. I don't know. You've really run a slew of picks here now. We got Joni, or yeah. Did you pick Joni Mitchell? Yeah.
yeah.
Joni Mitchell, and now Mitchell. And now we got Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like that's really something.
Well,
And
and
I missed one in there, but
I hope
oh
that
yeah, Taylor
our
Swift. How could I forget?
I hope that our legions of fans, I hope that you will
But
comment on here and tell me if I'm completely off my gourd for liking Blood Sugar Sex Magic as much as I do.
yeah, well, it's possible. Are we ending this conversation?
Yeah, tell me what you got next, Casey.
Well, I'm going to end with one little more tidbit here. A fun fact. I dug up a few. Do you know who who this album is dedicated to?
Dedicated to.
Uh,
I'm gonna guess Hillel Slovak, their guitarist.
nope. There's a tie-in here.
A tie-in. I have no idea.
Dedicated, believe it or not, it's dedicated to our next pick here by me, and that would be Mike Watt of the Minutemen.
Cool.
Yeah, believe it or not. It
I
kind of makes sense, I guess. It says Mike Watt and Fire Hose and the Minutemen. So, and that's my pick. Double nickels on the dime. Probably the greatest SST album. Uh, Call it weird hardcore jazz punk or call it whatever you want. But I think as that album goes along in time, it just keeps getting more and more cred, not just on the fact that a small indie label put out an amazing double album, but just the song crafting here. Was
mhm.
it 44 tracks or something?
Yep.
Uh, I mean, and also like look at these. This is the lyrics. What does that remind you of?
I don't know.
Paul's Boutique.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, we discussed Red Hot Chili Peppers here. They're kind of like the funk punk. And then we got Beastie Boys. They kind of were like obviously the hip hop punk, like quite
Mhm.
literally. And so now we're going into, I guess, Minutemen often get called jazz punk.
Well,
So
I give you
I know
credit.
Flea
You
was a big,
I'm going to give you credit. You have loved this album for a long time. I have heard the whole thing, I think, once in my life. So this is a good
yeah.
pick.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it was kind of, I wanted to segue out
Cool,
of
man.
this. And you know, it was a tie-in. So,
All right. Well, I
all
look
right.
forward to it. Hey, thanks for spending time listening to all 78 minutes of Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
Yep. And I didn't even get interrupted at work except for my phone ringing there.
Yeah, you had some glitching going on your video, but I think the
Okay.
audio came through. So anyway.
Okay.
All right, guys.
All
See you
righty.
next time, Casey.
All righty.